Geographical farming has been around forever. Agents have been doing this for a long time to get listings. Heck, agents are still doing this right now in 2025 to get listings. However, there is a tactic, there's a strategy that is inside of this farming technique that is so much better that I'm going to share with you in this video. And really quick, as you're watching this, if you're not yet earning 6 figures a year in this business of real estate sales, and you're ready for a coaching relationship, or at least you're open to one, I'll put a link in the description of this video. Feel free to pick a day and time for us to have a conversation and talk about what it's going to take you from maybe being overworked, underpaid, maybe even a little underappreciated, to where you can build a 6-figure listing agent business, one where you can work 4 or 5 days a week, earning the money that you want while living the lifestyle that I think that you want. And through that conversation, we can decide if working together right now, me as your coach, is something that makes sense for you or not. Now, obviously, if it doesn't, that's perfectly okay. We'll continue to pour into you. We'll continue to make videos just like this so that you can continue to grow your business and scale your income. So let's jump into it. Okay, so the idea of geographic farming is to pick an area of homes. I just picked 1,000 homes as a simple example. And the idea is to dominate one area as the go-to realtor in that market so that you build this brand recognition so that people over time come to you to list their property. Okay, fine. So the main idea that people have been doing for years, I'm talking about decades, is they would go into a specific area that they wanted to work and they would start to do some research. So they'd pick this 1,000 person farm, 1,000 home farm, and they were looking for there to be somewhere around a 5% turnover. So this was the likelihood of home sales in that area annualized. So what we're looking for in a 1,000 person farm is roughly 50 sales. Now, the idea of geographic farming is that you would market to all 1,000 of these homes, and you would try to win 10 to 20% market share or 5 or 10 deals from a 1,000 person farm. Okay, fine. Well, when we look at this strategy, we have to say, okay, well, number one, how long does this typically take? Well, anybody that's done any geographic farming would tell you that on average, it takes about a year for you to get your first listing. Okay, but the reality is, when you look at the cost, the investment into a geographic farm, we're going to say on average, it's $1 per month per household. So in other words, for a 1,000 person farm, all in, you're looking at somewhere around $1,000 per month average or investment. Okay. So when we go to do this, the first year, like we said, you probably get one deal. So when this starts to work, and it does work if you do the work long enough, if you can delay the gratification for a long enough period of time, and you can continue to execute on your marketing tactical strategies inside of your farm, you can and you will get listings, but it might take you 24 to 36 months for it to actually start to work. Okay, so fine. Let me grab my calculator and let's do some calculations. So we said, again, in your first year, it might take you, or in your first year, rather, you should get your first listing. But as this is rock and rolling, within that second year, if you do get a 10% return and you do 5 home sales, let's just say your average commission check is 10K. Okay, fine. So in order to do that, however, it's going to cost you how much? Well, $1,000 a month times 12. It's a $12,000 investment. And in exchange, you will make $50,000 back. So this is a net profit of 38K, which is not bad. I mean, when we're looking at this, that is about a 316% ROI. Not bad. So there's something that's even better than this, however, that agents that I'm coaching do that gets them a much better return. And I'm going to show that to you right now. All right. So like we just talked about in the geographic farming example, we said, okay, you're going to go and market to these 1,000 people and you're hoping you're going to be looking at this opportunity that has 50 homes that are selling within inside this 1,000 people. All right. So let me show you something that will completely change the way that you market and go after listings. So instead of geographic farming, in other words, just going after an area and canvassing the area, what is going inside? What's happening with inside of these 50 people that are actually moving? In other words, what are the demographics? What are the demographics of those people that are actually moving? And you start to analyze these sales. And we don't have time to break down all of this. But if you start to look at this, you start to say, okay, well, perhaps it's a average age of 62 years old is a percentage of this, is a large percentage. You have another large percentage that might be absentee owners. You've got another group of these people that maybe live in homes that are free and clear. In other words, they don't have no mortgage on the property. And you start to break down all of these different demographics. And you say, okay, well, this makes up a certain percentage. This makes up a certain percentage. And what you find is that the vast majority of these, 85 to 90% of these home sales, have demographics that are duplicatable. In other words, all these companies for all these years that have been trying to take the money from people like you and I, realtors, on these predictive analytics, you no longer have to do that. This information is now all accessible to you and I. There are many, many, many data providers out there that allow you to build your own list of demographics that we already know have the highest likelihood to transact, have the highest likelihood to actually sell a home. So let me paint a picture for you. This is what I do with all of my clients, is to say, okay, well, we can go after 1,000 random homes. That's up to you. That's totally up to you. Or you could go after 1,000 people that have a specific demographic. And here's what we know. Here's what happens with these lists. Okay. So if we build this list out, and I'll just give you a couple core examples of things that we go after. So things like, we're going to say, remember, and by the way, one of the reasons why people use this strategy in the first place is they want to focus their business in a geographic location. This, you still get the same benefit. You're still picking the zip code, the neighborhood level. You still get to decide on all of that. Nothing changes with demographic farming versus geographic farming. You're still picking, it's still location specific. However, we're just going to go more targeted. So again, let me explain. So we're going to go 1,000 random versus 1,000 specific demographics. So we've got a really, really good targeted list of people. So one is tired landlords, okay? Tired landlords. So these are people that have owned a rental property for more than 20 years, that have that property now paid off. So we know a large portion of these people sell these properties every single year. When we go back and look at all the home sales in the MLS, we can see a large percentage of them are in fact absentee owners, and they had no mortgage on the property. So it's like, okay, well, why don't we just go after them? Next, we can go after downsizers. So downsizers are just simply people that are of retirement age, that, like tired landlords, also have homes that are free and clear. They've also lived there for 20 years, and they have homes that are larger than the average home in your market, and typically where the first floor master is on the second level, not the first level. This list would also include them being empty nesters, so that we have data that tells us that these people most likely raised their family in these homes, and children are now gone. They're now retired. Now they're sitting on this huge, large nest egg, which all the reports and all the data suggest that one of the largest pool of new listings coming on the market are going to be from this demographic. So great. So we've got these tired landlords. Now we also have downsizers. So if we just went after these two groups of people, here's what we're seeing. Instead of there only being, remember, a 5%, we're going to call it opportunity on this side. Remember, there are 50 home sales on this random geographic farm that you're going after. On this demographic side of things, we are able to predict, just based on these two lists, by the way, there's many more too, but just these two, that there's a 30% opportunity. In other words, instead of there being 50 sales, now there's 300 sales. When we go back and we look at the people that have actually sold and we can tie them back down to these two demographics, if you went after 1,000 people with inside of these two lists in zip code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as an example, that the same investment, the same marketing plan, the same, maybe you are able to get more specific with your messaging, which is also going to help you with this, but it's the same investment. It's $1,000 a month to market to 1,000 homes. And so one opportunity is 50, one is 300. Well, if the conversion is the same, let's just keep apples to apples. And we say, okay, on the geographic side, we said that we would, in our first year, capture 10% market share, which was 5 sales. Remember? Well, if you did the exact same thing in your first year and you captured 10% on this side, oh, that's right. What does that equal? 30 sales. And this is what I'm seeing with agents that I coach all the time. It's because the group of people, it's all about this number of how many people are inside of your list that are actually going to transact. This is the difference between going after random people and going after people that have a higher likelihood to sell. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means instead of getting 5 sales for the same amount of work, for the same amount of effort, energy, investment, you're getting 30 sales, which in this case, if it's 10K per deal, it's $300,000 on a $12,000 investment, which means that you're going to get an 1,800% ROI on your efforts. I mean, it just makes sense that if you're going to spend your time, energy, effort, money, skill set, et cetera, why wouldn't we go after the people that we know have a much higher likelihood that are going to be selling their home versus just a shotgun approach and being completely super random? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In fact, I interviewed one of the agents I'm coaching right now who does this very thing. He breaks down his entire system. We made a video. You can watch that right here.